Good morning, Crystal. How are you today?
Good morning, Javon. We will try this again. Technology at its best and at its finest.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
How are you today? And I think when we ended up, we were just kind of talking about the Super Bowl, and you are an avid Super Bowler.
I am. I have promised myself I would watch the whole season because Tom Brady is playing, at 40 some odd years old. And of course, I missed all of it except for one game and then the Super Bowl. So I got a chance to to at least do that. But yeah, I thought both teams did a really good job. I thought Mr. Mahomes is going to be an excellent quarterback. I think he's young and talented and physically able, and he just got outplayed by Mr. Brady and the other team. They had so many weapons. Yeah, it was a kind of a good game, and that way it was more important to hang out with my buddies and eat tons of food that's bad for me and tell
Okay.
lies and all kinds of stuff. You know how you do when you're on the patio. Just like all kinds of stuff happens. And so that was good.
Oh, that was awesome. My sister and I, we're not football fans, so
Hmm. You look so
we play.
normal.
I know, huh?
Mm,
What we did was we spent the afternoon in the garden, so it was really cool. It was
good for
nice.
you.
And then
Good
we
for
came
you.
in the house, and my brother-in-law, he had Super Bowl food ready for us. So we did have Super Bowl food.
There you go. There you go. Which is some of the best parts. Some of the best part. Yeah.
Right. So just kind of interesting. Super Bowl in the middle of a pandemic. And um, so that's it's just so many new different things we're doing in the last couple of years. Last year and this year, just a new norm.
I think you're right. People keep telling me when we go back to normal, but I think the reality is that we're going to go back to a new normal. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's not going to be like it was before in all the ways that we think, or maybe even hope for that matter. It's going to be different, I think.
It's definitely going to be different, I think, and we're seeing that, and there are obviously some people that are truly having a difficult time with this
Yes.
adjustment, with this new norm, obviously, for those that just, but we have to get this pandemic under control, and that's the scary part, is that it just is completely out of control. So that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, I have faith in our new president. I think he's going to do something. I think it's going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people say it is going to be, and I think the economy is going to come back. I think the American entrepreneur is as strong and diligent and hardworking as ever, and we're going to be fine. But we do have to put the time in. We've got to
I agree
make it
with you,
happen.
and I do think that this is an excellent time for entrepreneurs to come up with new ideas, especially since there's so many pains that we can be solving, and so you
Yes.
have to use that ingenuity and put it to task. And I think we can come up with some amazing new ideas and concepts and
Yep.
innovations
Hmm.
that can turn around that can move the economy. And there's some industries, if you're in the online platforms, oh, you are just killing it out there right now, right? I
It
mean,
is the place to be.
if I look at my stock that's in technology, it's like, whoa, okay then.
There you go. Little MAGA, little Fang, all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, I mean, obviously retirement is, which is our conversation here, is going to be what it is, but being prepared for it, and more so now, I think, than even under different circumstances, because you don't know when retirement could be next week.
Very true. Very true. That's a very interesting way of putting it. It certainly is. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
my brother
and
brother-in-law retired. He February 1st was his official retirement date. He is so excited. He didn't know what to do. He really enjoyed the Super Bowl yesterday because Sunday meant he didn't have to go anywhere on Monday.
now that's retirement right there. That is all right there. Yeah. Yeah, we like that.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today in our conversations on the patio?
Well, funny you should mention that because one of our subjects actually has to do with the emotional concept of retirement. It's a little far down the list, but we can bring it up here in a little bit. But first, I want to introduce our show to folks and introduce my amazing partner, and then we
Okay.
can get started. How's that?
That sounds fantastic.
Okay, so welcome everyone to Conversations on the Patio with Javon and Crystal. That's supposed to be Crystal and Javon. I think you wrote that, Javon and Crystal.
Yeah. Well, you think we should flop it around?
This is a show, as Crystal suggested, about retirement, about finances, and it's a show based on the patio conversations that we all have with our friends. When Crystal and I met a few months ago on LinkedIn, we discovered that so many folks get information while they're hanging out with their friends on the patio, and unfortunately, all that that although that information is well intended, many of it just doesn't have the right points. It's just not quite on point. So we wanted to develop a platform to where people could get some really good, solid answers about retirement, 401ks, financial planning, that kind of stuff. So that's where we are. And before we get started, I wanted to introduce my amazing partner, Crystal Mitchell, and I have her bio right here. So, Crystal Mitchell is a business consultant and coach. She's the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, co director of Recycling Black Dollars, co host of The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, a weekly online radio show. She's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and the tricky one, a QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. That's so tough to say. I don't know why. So, today we've got a few topics, and Crystal, of course, please jump in. But the first one that you brought up so eloquently was preparing for retirement emotionally. And there isn't a huge amount of literature out there. I think the last time we had our show, you talked about a field of science, a growing field of science called uh, behavioral intelligence, I believe, where people look
Hmm.
at how people buy, what they buy with regard to the stock market. Maybe it's called
Hmm.
behavioral economics, I think. So it just takes a look at that portion of preparing for retirement, but it doesn't take a look at the emotional toll. And I've only seen a couple of companies put literature out there, but we want to talk about that just a little bit because I have read a couple of articles. One of the big things is that people have to get ready for is what are you going to do? And as you know, we're looking at a lot of folks that are in what we call the sandwich generation now, where their parents are getting older and they're having to take care of them. Their children are about to go to college and they're trying to foot that bill, and so when they get to their main earning years between 45 and let's say 55, 60, they're not able to put away for retirement because they've got these extra concerns they need to deal with. So that's one thing to keep in mind and to keep balance about yourself. You have to establish a balance because when you get right down to it, when your parents' money run out and when your kids are developing the situation where they want to have their own children, there's no one left for you. And that's one of those things that's generational. It doesn't go away. People keep finding themselves in there. So we definitely want to talk to our financial advisor when we start getting into our 40s, especially. Talk with the folks we had on last week, the lawyer for the wills and the trust, make sure that we're ready for retirement, but also make sure that we're ready emotionally. And what I mean by that is you're not going to work, or you're not going to work in the job that you have after 65. And you help a lot of folks with that, right? Who decide, hey,
Hmm.
I'm not doing this anymore. I want to start my own business. In fact, my father did that, right? He started his own carpet cleaning business after he retired,
Hmm.
and it was one of the best
Hmm.
things he's ever done. So, thinking about, oh, now I've got an opportunity to do something really cool now that I'm not working, or I can take a look at my spouse or people in my lives and see how I'm going to be different for them, One thing I would caution folks, and it's an article that I think you sent me, was problems don't usually go away, right?
Mm.
So if you've got issues in the family, if you have relationship issues outside the family, retirement is not going to make them better. So you may want to start finding ways to address those. I'm no psychotherapist, but find ways to address those now because they're only going to get worse. And then once you retire, they're really going to get worse. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other thing is, how do you stop being bored, right? And then, of course, my favorite, as you know, is make your plan early, right? And then it's okay if you change your plan, but make your plan early and see how it works for you. Because you may decide that, hey, that job at a local superstore where you greet people is lovely. And then after you do it for a couple of weeks, you might say to yourself, oh, no way. This is just not going to cut it. Right? So you want to prepare emotionally what's going to be changing, what's going to be happening, how are you going to deal with that. So that's number four. I think also the last thing I might say about that is it can be tough not having something to do. I'm often reminded of folks who, um, for whatever reason, decide that they're going to retire, and their spouses are in the position of saying, I don't want you underfoot and around for the next 30 years of my life. So you need to go do something else. Okay. Hmm. Crystal, are you frozen on me again? Looks like you are. Okay. Well, come on back and let's go ahead and hit the other three that we were going to talk about. The first one we want to talk about is if you're thinking of for preparing for retirement, think about an HSA. It's a great way to start saving cash. HSA is health savings account. The issue though is that you can't put that much in. You can put $3,600 per individual. You can put $7,200 as a family, and those numbers are if you're the employee, right? So you don't have to contribute if you're the employer, but they're very good because if you have medical bills, that money can come out of their pre-tax. If you don't have medicine bills, when you get to the age of 59 and a half or whenever, afterwards, when you need to pull the money out and you don't need to pay medical bills, you can pull it out for other things. You have to pay tax on it, but you can pull that money out. So it's a nice way to grow your money on a pre-tax basis. That's the HSA. The deal is your company has to establish it in the plan. One thing that we want to keep in mind if you're the employer, though, is that it's a plan built for participants. So you still have the responsibility, just like you have with your 401k plan, to make sure that the investments are appropriate, to make sure that the statements come out on time, to make sure that the plan is written correctly, and that all the bells are ringing and the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. You got to make sure of that. It's something you want to hire a good team to do. But they're very popular, and it's not tough to do one. It doesn't make your advisor very much money, but I've never met an advisor who doesn't want to deal with that. So it's pretty simple to do, and it really helps your participants that want to save. The next thing on our list is when your employer doesn't match. I mean, he gives you the 401k plan, but he doesn't put any money in. And people have gotten, I don't know, they've
Is
gotten
that
entitled.
possible?
Oh, yes.
I thought that was part of the whole concept of it was that they're matching your dollars. So there are actually companies out there that don't match?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe, but saving for your retirement is your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of your employer, right? That's just a little sweetened thing. I will say this. I did education meetings for a long time in my career, and I would say to folks, you know, it's not free money when your employer does match you, right? Don't think of it as free money. It is money that your employer is paying you for services rendered. So if you're not taking advantage of that match, then you're just leaving money on the table. And I don't quite understand that. You could just give it to me if you want to do that. Right.
Wow. So
Yeah.
yeah, then you need to start planning earlier.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Right. So, but there are employers out there who don't match. Providing a 401k plan is not free. Employers have to pay for that. And there's a lot of fiduciary headache that comes with it. And if you're a small time employer, you've got to find someone who's going to do that for you. Someone's got to do the payroll. Someone's got to do the meeting. Someone's got to do the essentially the work of the 401k. They've got to connect with the providers and all that. So if that falls to you, the employer, that could be a bit of work. So there is an expense with having a 401k plan. So if you've got one, then you want to thank your employer because they are really doing something great. So and also, you want to remember that even though your employer doesn't match, you still get to put away $19,500 if you're under the age of 50. And if you're over 50, another $6,500. And for many of us, that's a very nice way to save because we get that tax benefit. We get to put that money away on a pre tax basis. And it grows, of course, as you know, tax deferred. And then, of course, for those of us that can afford that, you can put away in the Roth section of your 401k, and then it grows tax free. And then, of course, as I always say, a combination is the best for most Americans. So if you got an employer and he offers a 401k, take advantage of it, right? What happens though when you have an employer and he doesn't have a 401k? What are you going to do now, right? Well, as you know, I always say, start your IRA, right? And most of us should have a 401k and an IRA, but I would say start that IRA or that brokerage account, like we talked about um, or a couple of weeks ago. But if you have a side hustle, let's say that you're working and you're doing a little job on the side, you can always start a 401k on the side, right? And you can have a profit sharing plan with it. Your limits are going to be the same. The federal government is not going to suggest that you only limit yourself to a specific amount of profits. You can have as many of those as you want. However, or profit sharing plans as you want. However, the amount that you can contribute from your paycheck, that is the amount that you can deduct, or as we call it in the business of retirement plans, the amount that you can what do we call them? We call them conduct. We call them contributions,
Contribution.
employee
Okay, okay.
contributions. The amount the employee can contribute, that's still going to be $19,500, right? So you have to keep that in
Mm.
mind. So think, if you're going to do the side hustle and you don't have a 401k plan at work, start that side hustle, start the 401k plan on your side hustle, adjust your salary so that you can fully fully contribute to that plan. So that's one way to go right there too. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the side hustle. And of course, I like the individual account in the IRA, so we don't have to talk about that. And that was it. Crystal, you still with me? It seems like you're frozen again. Okay, so while Crystal is figuring out that frozen thing, the next thing that I want to talk about is um, the don't be that guy. Right? Don't be that guy. So often I hear people say that a retirement plan company takes advantage of them when they retire and takes their money, right? And they lose money when they retire. And I just want to talk about that for a moment. And this section of Don't Be That Guy is someone that decides they want to take all of their money once they're ready to retire, all that money, stick it into the money market account so they can figure out what they want to do with it, and then move it into a bank and then hire a financial advisor so that they can help them manage those monies. Okay, and that is exactly the wrong thing to do. Do not do that, right? Do not take all of your money out of your retirement plan, stick it in a money market, and then stick it in an account and hire a financial manager to manage it for you. If you do that, then all that money you take out of there is going to be taxed as regular income. So you'll have your salary, plus that money that's in your plan, that's all going to be taxed at regular income. For many of us, that's going to put us well over the 37% threshold. So we're going to lose a ton of that retirement money right there. Boom, gone to taxes. Not good. Not good. A better plan is to either move your money into that money market account and hire that financial advisor to help you move that money into an IRA. And that IRA could be an annuity, it could be just a fund that has annuities, or a fund that has investments like bond funds that are actually going to pay you an income so that you can survive on that. Some type of tax deferred account so that you can develop or get income, but it's not going to cost you taxes to have that money there, right? So, or if you want, you could just leave your money in the plan. There are many plans, especially companies that are medium to larger size, which are starting to become what we call a little bit more paternal. So you've always been able to do this, but some companies are going to say, hey, start your annuity here with us, and we'll just leave you in the plan. And then you can actually live off of that money in an annuitized fashion, right? So they want you to keep the money in the plan because they don't want guys like me to come up to you and try to talk you into something that you don't need, right? So
Right.
um, that's always an option there, is to get some type of payment out of that uh, retirement money. And you're going to have to talk with a financial advisor then, but your money still stays in plan. If you like those investments, if you think that companies manage your money just fine, then okay, leave it there and have a financial manager help you invest that. Word of caution, if you leave your money in the plan, the company may change investment houses and you may not have options to invest in those options anymore, the option to invest in those plans. That company could be sold, and then you're stuck again, right? The money still belongs to you, but you don't have the same management options that you had before. So I usually tell folks, when you get to the end of your career and you're about ready to retire, back up 5 years and talk to your
I gotta say that's a little too late, Javon.
talk to your financial advisor, but at least talk to your financial advisor so they can help you transition out of that work that you're doing and into a, uh, a qualified plan or some type of tax-free plan so that you can develop an income stream. That's the
Yeah.
better way to go.
And I think I think I was mentioning to you, and hopefully my internet is going to be solid. It's doing some weird things today, but okay.
Uh,
but I think I was mentioning to you earlier. One of my tennis friends, we were at the court, and he's ready to retire, or let me put it this way, he's hating his job.
okay, okay, those are not the same, but yes, I hear
Yeah.
you.
But he is in a position, and he's at least time wise, that he could be really looking at retirement. So I asked him, I said, so have you talked to anybody? He goes, no, I don't even know where to start. So, but and I guess if you've been working year after year and you reach that 25, 30-year marker, and it's time, and you're tired, you're not going to go and get a new job. So we at the very top of the program, we were talking about that emotional piece, but
Mhm.
at that point, should they go to HR? Who should they, just to get the ball rolling, just to start the process? If they don't have a you, if they don't have a Javon.
Who doesn't have a me?
I don't know. After this show, many will have a Javon.
Well, as you're probably not so fond of hearing me say, right? Get a plan. That is the deal. You have to get a plan. And it doesn't matter where you start. You can start at your HR person, you can start at a financial advisor's place, you can start with your tax person, but you're going to need all three of those anyway, right? So I don't think it matters. I think you're probably more comfortable with your HR person. and they can give you a minute advice because they can't talk to you about your particular finances. They can't talk to you about what you should do, but they can
Mhm.
say, hey, this is the name of our company, XYZ Investment House, and there's all kinds of resources there. They can say, hey, this is what we offer retirees if you're interested in that. And then
Mhm.
again, direct you back to your investment house company, the place that actually has your money, right?
Mhm.
And then I would go directly to a financial advisor. I wouldn't pass go. I wouldn't collect $200. I would go directly to a financial advisor and say, hey, I got this kind of money with Social Security. I've got this kind of money in my account. I want to do this, this, and this, and it cost X. How do we get there?
Okay.
Right?
And would I start at Social Security? Because sometimes, that's a process, is it not?
It is, and it's not painless. I mean, they try to do it as painless as they can, but everybody's different, and if you call them, you're going to be on hold forever. And if you go in and see them, which is probably what a lot of people ought to do, that's going to take forever, right? And so, the best thing to do is go online at ssa.gov, www.ssa.gov. Uh, but even that leaves you going, I would at least do that first. You can put in your age, how much money you made, a couple other characteristics about yourself. Your account will come up and they will let you know, okay, if I take the money at 62, okay, if I take the money at 60, 70, 75 or 65, take 62, 65, 67, what's that mean, right? How does that look? And you're going to want to do that anyway because your financial advisor is going to ask you, right? All right,
Mm.
what kind of money do you have? But of course, as you know, the first thing you got to do is think about what you want your retirement to look like.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
But
that's where
now
people get into trouble.
now I remember some friends of mine's, there was some disconnect between their Social Security and what they thought was there. They may have gotten married, names changed, records didn't cross over. So have you encountered that with your clients?
We have in a couple of ways. One is that, and I'm not an expert on Social Security, so don't paint me into
Hmm.
that corner, but one is that you have to work 40 weeks in order to get your Social Security payment, right? So if
Okay.
you're in a job where maybe you're a minister, or
Hmm.
maybe you're a minister's spouse,
Hmm.
or maybe you were married to someone and you never worked, right?
Mm.
Or you only worked when you were in high school for like 2 years, right? Or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um, and that was in the summer.
Hmm.
You may not have put enough in to get
Mm.
Social Security. So you got to work 40 weeks to get the Social Security. That's one right there. So
Okay.
keep that in mind and keep that in mind for your kids, I would say. The other is if you happen to be one of those folks like a minister's spouse and you've just sort of lived with that that minister, right? And
Hmm.
you've never, I mean, you've worked hard in
You're a
the
homemaker, but you
church,
haven't actually
right?
been
If you're a
outside
homemaker,
of the
yeah.
home.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's hard work and it deserves compensation. It just isn't there. So you haven't paid in, so you don't get to take the money out,
Mm.
which is kind of tough, right?
Mhm.
And then the other thing, of course, is if you have worked, then you can at least do the Social Security thing, right? You can at least get that if you've worked that 40 weeks.
Mhm.
But I talked to a friend of mine who's divorced from her husband, and now she gets her Social Security, and she gets half of his,
Mm.
which that's not such a bad
That's
deal,
not a
right?
bad thing.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think that compensates her for being married to him for all that amount of time. But, that's between them, right? But she did get part of his Social Security. So, it's really good. Number one, I would say if you are a parent, make sure your kid knows working for the Lord is good, but if they want some Social Security, they need to work 40 weeks, right? So
Oh, okay.
you got to do that. And also, if you happen to be a minister, you need to work for an organization that pays into Social Security.
And that's kind of interesting for a minister, so to speak, because I've done accounting for those that are in the ministerial world. Um, they get paid, but not necessarily. They get a housing allowance.
Yes. Yes.
And so that housing allowance is not part of a payroll type of situation.
Yeah.
Uh, it's what's allocated for them
Yeah.
being a licensed, ordained minister,
Minister.
and
Yeah.
so they don't normally get it through a regular system. So I don't know how do you have you had any ministers
We
that?
started a plan specifically for ministers.
Mm-hmm,
It was a 403(b)(9) plan.
mm-hmm,
It's a plan very much like a 401(k) plan. And one of the reasons that we started that was because so many people had so many different arrangements for the housing agreement, or housing arrangement, that um, they didn't know what was up. They usually do have some money they can put away though. And
mm-hmm,
so I think what was going on was people were working in the ministry, they weren't making a huge amount of money. And so once they were able to retire, um, they didn't have enough money to buy a house, right? So
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
housing allowance was created. And then we started to find out that old ministers rarely retire as ministers, right? If you
That's
think
true.
about it, most, a lot of financial advisors, a lot of life coaches, a lot of teachers, a lot of there's a lot of people that used to be ministers
Yes,
realized when they got into their 40s and 50s that there's no money here. And so they
right.
suddenly became something else, right? So that they could
Mm-hmm,
make money. So there's some organizations out there that create 403(b)(9) so that folks can actually put away money as they're moving through their ecumenical career. And that way, once they retire, they have something to live on and they can stay in the priesthood or stay in the ministership. So it's
hmm.
definitely something to consider.
And that's
And,
pretty much for the clergy, though.
for the clergy,
Okay.
very good point. It's not for the clergy wife or the
Okay.
sister or no. It is
Just the
for the
clergy.
clergy. Yeah. So if you
Oh,
have
okay.
that organization where you have a minister and you have the minister's brother, and the minister gets the housing allowance, the minister's brother, who's I think the term perhaps a layperson in the
Mhm,
church,
mhm.
they don't get the housing allowance,
Mm,
right? That's a
mhm,
problem. That's a problem. So they need to be one of those people that pays Social Security,
mhm.
right? So even though they're working hard in the church and they're getting money, they don't get the housing allowance. And if the church doesn't offer a 403(b)(9), then they've got to figure something out. And they've got to figure out a way to work or to make to work 40 weeks so they can
Mhm.
get some Social Security. So they may, be working at that bowling alley at night so they can get to Social Security. So um, we do know folks who are uh, not ministers. They don't get the housing allowance. They do work in the organization,
Mhm.
but the organization doesn't pay them,
Right, exactly.
right? So
Mhm.
they're working at the bowling alley so that at least they can get Social Security. And 40 weeks is 10 years.
Yeah, that's a lot. So that's what we would call, so retirement is not a one size fit all.
Mm-mm, not at
And
all.
it sounds like from what you're saying, depending on what your occupation or your passion or your vocation is, it has very specifics to that particular vocation as well, and that you should know those ins and outs as well.
Yeah, as you just saw, I just went through that kind of quick and said a whole bunch of stuff that nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Well,
And
I
that's
mean, but it made it
because,
very clear who
yeah,
thought, right?
yeah,
Thinking, okay, I'm doing the Lord's work, or I'm doing
yeah.
this passion, and
Hmm.
I'm getting paid. But again, a lot. What I have found in my accounting world is the lack of information, or we call it financial literacy. illiteracy
Mhm.
is astonishing. But like we said at the beginning of the show, where is this taught? Where are you having this educational conversation about retirement, right?
Right.
It's not like
Yes.
you can go take a class somewhere.
Right. Yeah. It's true. You can't. No, it's tough. You have to get it from somebody. If your parents didn't tell you about it, so many of us just don't know. I mean, we're out on the patio saying, "Well, Bob did X, Y, and Z." Right? There are folks in my family who they just do not want to have a reverse mortgage. If you don't want to have one, that's fine, but you have to know why.
Right.
You don't know why. It's just someone told you it was a bad idea. Well, why? You could get off the cat food if you had a
Right,
reverse
exactly.
mortgage, maybe.
Mhm,
So,
mhm. And that was a big one right there because, when we had and also the wills and trusts. Those are all parts of the bigger picture,
mhm.
when you're on that other side of making some decisions about working and non-working and or not working is when are we having these conversations and who's going to have these conversations with me? How do I go find a Javon? Because he
Yeah,
seems to know what he's talking about. So where do I find him
but you
so
could just
that
look me up on Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'll help you out.
no problem,
Yeah,
find
I
him on
will be
LinkedIn.
found. I'm not trying to hide here, but
But all it and that's
very good point.
right, exactly, because some people are just in their day-to-day hustle, their grind, man. They're not, and they're hearing bits and pieces from the barbershop, or Aunt Gertzie is going to tell me a little bit of this because of her experience, and uh, my friend that I watched the Bucks game, the Super Bowl with, he might throw out a few little bits of tidbits at the Super Bowl, but this is all little bits and pieces, and you go away going, wow, that was interesting. I wonder who I can talk about in more detail about that, right?
It's so true. It's so true. I think it's very true because not everybody is the same, right?
Mhm,
You may want to invest the way that your boss invest, for example, right? Let's say he's got this type of investment lineup, and so you just want to get that kind of investment line because it ain't hurting him. He's doing pretty well. He's the boss of
mhm,
the company, but your boss doesn't have your risk tolerance, right?
right,
You have a different risk tolerance. He's
mhm,
got or she's got tons of money, and
mhm,
so for them to be a bit more risky with that money, that's fine, right? But you don't have that. You have kids, you have parents to take care of with dramatically less money. So your risk tolerance is dramatically different. So should you do what he does? Not if it's going to keep you up at night, because if
mhm,
he loses half of his fortune, he's okay.
mhm,
You
mhm.
lose half of yours, you're not okay.
You're not okay.
You're not
Okay.
okay. So when we take a look at Social Security, right? What should I do? Where should I go? Well, your neighbor, he may have a totally different situation than you do. So for him, it's appropriate to wait until 67 till he has retirement. Maybe he started his 401k years ago and
Mhm,
fully funded it for the last 30 years or so. So he's got tons of money there. You're not that person. So what's
mhm,
good for your neighbor may not be good for you, and vice versa. When you talk about, uh, I don't know, emotionally preparing for your 401k plan, you may be tired. You
yeah.
may be ready to stop now. You may be one of those folks like when I was down there at Emory University, right? Those folks that were the maintenance workers who are out there in the
Mhm,
sun. They're lifting that load and toting that bale, and they did all of that hard work. And the lady got up in front and she said, "Look, you folks get to be 65, you're going to be broke down. You're
true.
not going to want to come in here." So for folks that are doing that hard physical labor, I feel for them, but they are the ones that need the most help
Mhm.
because they're not going to be able to stand up
On their own.
on their own or at some greeter place or something like that. So yeah, so you
Right.
want to make sure that you talk with someone who knows what your situation is. And unfortunately, that may not be your aunt or your best friend. It may be someone that you tell,
Mhm.
like that financial advisor. And yeah, you got to find them. And I have no problem with someone going to see three or four of them. There's
to pick the right one
nothing
for you.
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And
Hmm.
also, you want to realize that there's a lot of ways to get to Rome. So one financial advisor may pick one way and another may pick another way. They're not wrong, they're just different. In fact, I remember a study where they'd given 10 financial advisors the same set of characteristics to pull out the best retirement for someone, and they had 10 roadmaps for that person to follow. They all were for the same
Really?
organization. All were for the same
Wow.
organization, all the same situation, 10 ways to go. So, depending on who you are, who you talk to, what makes sense for you, what's good for you, that's where you want to go. But you got to figure that out. And that's going to take a little bit of time. A financial advisor that helps you with that situation, where you can talk to about it. I
Hmm.
spend a lot of time talking people off the wall.
Yeah.
Just telling people not to sell. So that's part of their gig. Don't think you're wasting their time. That's why they're there. They want to help you go through this process.
Hmm.
So, and sometimes it takes a little while, but that's good for them, and it's good for you to go through that with them because they're going to be friends with you. Just like when someone comes to talk with you, you're going to know all their spending habits.
Exactly. And it
Yeah.
takes a little while for them to get to that place, where we can have that heart to heart conversation and they're open to listening. Just the nature of what I do, even as a business coach, it's the same thing, right? We have a lot of passions and desires. We have a lot of information that may or may not go anywhere. Uh, we also have, and I think this was the beginning of this of our topics today, is we have a lot of emotional stuff that will cause us to procrastinate because out of fear, out of ignorance, out of out of lack of knowledge, right? Or just the mere fact, what happens if when I do retire, I have absolutely nothing to do. Maybe I don't want to retire, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah. So true, especially now, right? Since, most folks that have hit 60, if you've hit 60, there's a
Mhm.
good chance you're going to be around here till 90. That's
Yeah,
another 30 years. That's a
exactly.
lifetime for folks, right? So
Right.
and you want to make them good years if you
Make them good
can.
years. You may also, you have relationship stuff going on. The wife has been taking care of the household. She's the homemaker,
Hmm.
the queen of her fiefdom. And then all of a sudden, the husband is home every day, and you're like, oh my God, he needs to go away. Why is he not at work? Oh my God.
It's very true.
Right,
It's very
so
true.
those are the things that we, you know uh, all of a sudden I'm not working, so my sister was taking care of my elderly mom, and I was like, okay, you're not working now, that's your job, right? And
Hmm.
wait, so there's a lot of things and,
Hmm.
and situations
Yeah.
that can help you in that procrastination of not being ready.
So true. So true. I think that's one of the reasons why the pandemic is bringing up some interesting situations for so many of us, where we're looking at, "Oh, what's it like to be with this woman or this man for this amount of
Mhm.
time?" I mean, he's sitting there at the table all day, right? I'm over here under the stairs in my office. He's at the table all day, and the
All
kids
day.
are running around, and we're
Right.
splitting up the internet. What do you call it?
The
The
bandwidth.
the bandwidth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
for
Because
the
everybody
last year.
year.
So now you have a good idea as to who these people are.
Yes. Right,
So
exactly.
and yeah, and you got to retire. So.
And so this is actually a good time for you, for those of you that are in retirement advisors, because this is probably the best example, on top of the fact that money's have been a lot tighter, because you don't have, some of us do have money coming in, some of us don't have money coming in, and in that case, and I haven't, let's say this whole year. and this is a hypothetical. This whole year, I've been not working. I'm kind of on a furlough, right? So my job is not technically matching my income. I'm not matching.
Technically.
Yeah, they're not matching they're not matching my income, and I'm not putting anything in. What happens to this year
What
or last
happens
year?
to this year?
Yeah, so I didn't put anything in my retirement plan. So do I lose a year? My boss is obviously not putting in anything. He's not matching, or they're not matching. Do I lose 2020?
Well, in the sense that the money you could have put in, you've lost that opportunity. But the
Okay.
money that was there, you haven't
It's
lost that.
okay,
It's
so
still
that's
there.
working.
Yes, it's
Okay.
still there. It's still in the market, and that's a very good way to put it. The money that was there is still working. I like that expression. That's exactly what's going on. The market is going up and down. The stocks that were gaining are still gaining. The ones that were losing, I would go back in and reevaluate where you are and
Mhm.
rebalance and think about where you are rather, okay, this
Mhm.
is the pandemic, so it's not like it's Armageddon, right? So
Mhm.
think about that, but
Mhm.
also understand that the money's still in the market.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if we talked about uh, borrowing and withdrawals.
I
Did
think
we talk
we
about
did
that?
like several shows earlier on that. I
Okay.
think you had said you couldn't you at that time when we had that conversation, I think it was like July or something, and you there was some kind of cutoff or some deadlines
Right.
that
Yeah.
were
Right. Right.
not there anymore for you to do that.
Right. So the deadline for the $100,000 loan,
Mhm.
that was September 31st, I believe. So that's not happening. So if you were still working for a company, and you wanted to borrow from your 401k plan, you want to check out how that furlough works, right?
Mm.
If you can still borrow from there, you're not going to get the $100,000, but you may be able to borrow. But you can certainly make a withdrawal if you need to. You wouldn't be able to make that special withdrawal where you have the 3 years to pay it back. And do you remember that one where you have three
Yeah,
years to pay
yes.
it back?
Mhm.
So you don't have that opportunity, but you do still have a withdrawal where you can take money out of the plan. I don't recommend it if you can hang on and not take money out of the plan.
Mhm.
Then I would definitely suggest you do that. But we also know that things happen. You got to do what you got to do. So if you do take that withdrawal, you will be taxed on it. But in a situation where you didn't make any other money, your taxes are going to be considerably lower than what they would if you had a paycheck. And
Mhm.
um, and
So that's a good time to call and have a conversation on, whether I should or whether I shouldn't, because everybody's situation is unique to themselves,
it
right?
is, it is, it
And
is.
they
And
could
if
have
you
that
have,
conversation.
yeah, you do, and you want to make a plan, right? So if you're working, your spouse is working, which one should you take the money out of? How's that plan work for your family? Understand you're going to be taxed on that. Understand that um, that money that comes out of there is no longer in the market, as you suggested, working for you, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you want to take that into account.
Have you guys heard in your industry, based upon our new president and all of the new things, are there going to be anything coming down the pike that would affect or help our world in the retirement for those that's about to retire?
Oh, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about retirees. There's a couple of people in my office who are looking at the retirement plan that Mr. Biden is putting out, which is dramatically different than it is now, where we're talking about a tax credit instead of a tax deduction. And it looks for so many Americans like that tax credit is going to be dramatically less than the deduction. I don't have that inked. I don't
Okay.
have that as a surety, and I'm sure that once it gets to Congress, it's going to change. But we do have some rumblings of
Okay.
a new tax bill specifically for retirement put forth by Mr. Biden. I hate to be cautious about it but I just don't know. And so many times, it starts out one way and it becomes something different.
Yeah, because we have a whole lot of people in their interjections
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
that changes it, and
yeah,
and and as politics is today, is such a all or no.
yeah.
Or
So
you're
many
all in or you're
times.
all out. There's no
Yeah,
seems to
yeah.
be no happy medium
Right. Yeah,
that
the
we can come
grandfather
in.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's kind of tough. Um yeah, I
yeah.
can't even say which way to go. Should you jump now or wait? I don't I don't even know that, right? So
Right.
it's
I
all
would
up in the air.
think that during this time, since we are kind of in a lull, that the more that individuals are reading up on retirement and all of the components to go with it, I'm sure there's some excellent literature out there for them to really get knowledgeable. I think I remember my brother-in-law uh, about 10 years ago. He took a class, I think. He used to work for he retired from UCLA, and I think they offered or he found a class on preparing for retirement. Do those do those type of classes still exist? Because that
You
was a
know,
number of years.
um they usually do. And the best way to get those, I think, is to go to your employer when they hold those annual or semi-annual meetings and request the employer to ask the company that is putting on that meeting. These are folks that have your 401k. Ask
Mhm.
them to put out something like that. I when I worked for that company that shall remain nameless,
Okay,
'cause
all right.
they don't want to pay me to talk about them. When I worked for them, I had a meeting specifically designed for retirees. We talked about Social Security, we talked about the emotional pull, we talked about annuities, we talked about life insurance, we talked about all of these things
Hmm.
that a person can just start with some basic knowledge. Certainly not
Hmm.
in depth, but just start so they have some of the terms at least, and then go and talk to their financial advisor or their family first of all about what they want to do. Right. Um, so I would certainly start at your company where your 401k is. Start there.
Hmm.
There's probably a class or at least someone you can talk to. And then I would go to a community college or something like that. I'm sure there's something, some kind of class there. The problem though with books is that they're last year. I mean, they're they're set up for what happened then, right? You're like, oh, this is before the pandemic. Well, now we have a pandemic. It's a little different situation. What are we gonna do now?
Right.
So that's the tough thing there. I Every day I see articles about people that believe or don't believe in retirement. I would almost say maybe go there. There's a couple of magazines out there. Like I said, they don't want to pay me to talk about them on the show here. But there's a couple of magazines out there that are known fairly well
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
people that are amateur investors
Okay.
and written by very good organizations who, like I said, don't want me to talk about them. But if you read those for about a year, and I can remember saying this to someone, if you read this magazine and this magazine and this magazine, I think there's about three of them. You read those for a year, you're going to have some pretty good investment knowledge, pretty good IRA knowledge, pretty good 401k knowledge. You would be surprised. But
Mm.
you got to get into them, right? So you can read them about a year and you'll be amazed at the knowledge that you can get there.
Well, maybe, Javon, we should reach out to some of those individuals that we might be able to mention their name if they supported the conversations on the patio.
Maybe
And then that way we could do a little
talk about them.
referring, little talk about them and add some tidbits of information to our our audience here.
We
So that
might.
that
There's a
might be a
bunch of
conversation we can have.
yeah,
Maybe we
yeah,
can
that's
put
true.
that out
It's
there.
always worth a conversation.
It's always worth the conversation, so they could have that. But if you have any workshops or your partners, maybe we can or some information, we could put that in our description on the Facebook. But so that there's benefit
Yes.
for
Again,
those.
it's always worth a
But as
conversation.
as basically what we're getting around to saying is that the more information that you have, the better informed decisions you can make, and then you're not waiting until the very last minute to make those very important decisions for yourself and your family.
That's so true. Thank you for buttoning it up that way. That was quite eloquent. That's exactly the truth. More information for you,
For you.
specifically for you. And you've
Hmm.
got to qualify that it's for you. It
Hmm.
doesn't do you any good to get information that's great for Billy Bob over there.
Hmm.
You got to get information that's for you, that's specific to you. So thank you.
Hmm. Hmm. But we really like you is to find that advisor that you feel trust with, and you can sit down and have conversations, and they can help you with your pre-planning, and also your in the middle of planning and your post planning, so that you are well taken care of into your glory years, because as Yvonne just mentioned, we are living a very long time. I cannot tell you how many people this weekend people were doing birthday shout outs, and they were 103 and
Oh,
102.
wow.
Yeah, 100. That's a long time to be on the planet and not have a plan.
And not have a plan. That's true. That's very true. Very true. Very true.
so
Yeah.
we hope that no one's going to be leaving us, and so you just want to make sure the time that you are here is a meaningful one from a financial standpoint.
It's so true. And once you get into it, it's it's not that tough. I mean, the people that are in the financial services industry, there's some fairly smart people, but they're not that smart, right? They just do this all the time.
Hmm.
So, uh, for most of us aren't that smart. We just do this all the time.
Hmm.
So, once you get into it, you'll start to understand. It just takes a little bit of paying attention. And don't think you have to be an expert, right? You don't, nobody knows how to fix their car, but they drive them just fine. So you
Exactly.
just have to have enough information so that you understand where to put the gas, how to make the tune up, who to take it to, where you can get good advice. And you probably have to go to three or four different mechanics or financial advisors to get that info. And it's not because that mechanic is bad, he just doesn't rub you the right way,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And
Exactly.
so you want to make sure that your financial advisor gets you. So
But
that's
I
pretty
think the most important thing is, and this is my favorite part of the show, is that you guys have enough experience from "Don't Be That Guy" that you can relay a lot of those experiences to help kind of reinforce what you're trying to why you're trying to help them, right?
we can. We've seen a lot of situations. Trust me, seen a lot of situations, and some of them are really, really good, and some of them are surprisingly good.
Mm,
Yeah, some of them are surprisingly good. If you've done mostly the right thing, that is, you contributed to your 401k, you worked your 40 weeks, you got some real estate, you I don't know, you had your IRA, you got some investments that didn't do so well, and some of them did do so well, whatever. You've got that thing going on, you would really be surprised at what you can do if you talk with the right person, you know. So the first thing to do, of course, is figure out what you want, get the plan, and then find a financial advisor and go to three or four of them. I can't urge you more. Go to three or four of them. Find the one that clicks with you and work with that person.
mm. But as he said, our first step is what do you want your retirement to look like? I think
Yes.
just like in business, when I talk to entrepreneurs, what do you want this new business to look like? What do
Yeah.
you want this new business to do for you?
Right.
And I always say, Javon, to them, and it's not just about you, the individual, it's about you and your family. What would you being an entrepreneur look like, not just for you, but for the entire family? And
Hmm.
then, plan that out. What are those milestones? What are for the next 5, 10, 15 years? So overall, what's the goal? And I think that helps put them on the right path.
I couldn't
Um,
agree with you more. That's
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah. So
Exactly right.
everyone, your first step is, what does retirement look like for you?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It,
Yeah. And have
basically,
a good time with it.
exactly. It's nothing to
Yeah.
be fearful of. It's, hey,
Mm.
it may be that you've done this fantastic planning and you had a fantastic planner or an advisor like Javon, or maybe you young enough right now, you'll reach out to Javon Thomas Retirement Group. I'll plug it for you, my friend. And you'll say, Javon, you know what I want to do? I want to live half the time in America, and then I want to go to an island, and I want to spend my other time just laxing on the beach.
Laxin'.
Laxing on the
Laxin'.
beach. How do I make that happen, Javon?
Well, it's funny. And I don't want to say that you don't need lots of money. The more money you have, the better. But, there are some modest people that are living some fairly good lives, because, they took some time, and because of the time that we're in, and because we were able to do some things with the money that they had and the assets that they had. So it's getting to the point, though, where we should close our
Close
show
out.
down. So let
Yeah.
me let me throw one more plug in for my friend Crystal, and then we will end the show. How's that?
All right. Sounds good to me.
Okay, so everybody, please meet Crystal Mitchell. She is the business coach and consultant. She's a CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, or the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions. She's a co director of Recycling Black Dollars, co host of the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, that other weekly online radio show. She's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and she's an expert at QuickBooks, ProAdvisor, financial strategist. So thank you, Crystal, for being on the show with me. I want to say thank you to everyone else who was able to join us. And please join us next week. We're going to have a colleague of mine, Regina Faison, who's a wealth advisor. So you can see the difference between us and the kinds of things that she does and how and when you want to connect with her. And with that,
Awesome. We are had today. You've tuned into Conversations on the Patio, where you have those much needed conversations in a very relaxed environment. And as you can see, we both have different backgrounds here. Our patios are a little bit different, but both of them are very conducive for these conversations. So you like Javon's, very greenery, very relaxing. That little swing right there is pretty cool.
that
And
is
then
nice.
mine's is, yeah, I know, huh? And then mine's is over here is, it's more little more, a little popping color, with the orange and
Yeah.
black. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Very
yeah.
cool. Very cool. All right,
So
everybody.
we'll see you
Um,
guys next week.
thank you very much. Thank you, Crystal. Talk to you later.
All right, bye bye, everyone.